one of the local labor leaders, but I think the reason he's going to speak tonight is because his son is a soldier in Iraq right now, and I'll let him have his thing, and then we'll go to the question and answer.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for giving me this forum. I'm Russell Kilday Hicks. I work here as a infotech consultant in the Capital Planning Department, and I'm also chapter president of the biggest staff union after the faculty union, the California State Employees Union, California State University. My son, Matthew Kilday, is currently serving as a military policeman in the U.S. Army in Iraq. Like most Bush speeches, I start this tale with 9/11/2001. My son Matthew was 17, now 22, when the terror supposedly all began in the neocon fairy tale version, soon to be a major animated film by Disney, no doubt. He was in high school in a conservative rural Connecticut town, and this is an old money town, for people who understand that term, where our president comes from before oil made him a Texan. He was enticed with the, quote, early enlistment buddy system, where you can go through boot camp with your best friend from Podunk High. He said he was also looking for help with college, which I suspect was intended as a slight against me for not being able to afford him a fully funded college ride on my state salary. This money for college program is not like the GI Bill under which my father went to school following World War II. It's a bit of a sham, as the aid you get is dependent on matching funds, so they have to pay you enough to be able to save to get the match, which they don't do, of course. I have an idea for a better program. How about we stop wasting oodles of money overseas on questionable nation-building projects and adequately fund our schools and universities and provide free tuition to all qualifying youth? There is a direct connection between the war on and occupation of the world, with over 700 military bases worldwide, and your tuition increases, and the way faculty and staff are treated in the CSU system and other universities, and the quality of education that you get here. The story I heard about my son signing up was that he wanted regular Army, and his mother talked him into the National Guard. This is my ex-wife, his mother. When he told me he signed up, he said he joined the Guard so that he wouldn't have to go overseas. My wife and I, his stepmom, who is actually here, said we didn't think that was correct. When you sign up, you belong to them. We all like to be right, but I would rather have been proved wrong in this instance. The way the nation's National Guard is being used is wrong on many fronts. For one, young men and women are attracted to the idea of serving the country and defending our borders in our post-9/11 climate. If you have a poor sense of history, which I would argue our nation's high schools as a whole are designed to deliver, you have little understanding of the aggressiveness of our military in, quote-unquote, defending our national interests outside our borders. Defending our borders was always a very small piece of that project. More importantly, the National Guard has been used as an emergency force for governors to save lives during real natural and often misnamed natural or other man-made disasters. Examine Katrina, and then imagine a major earthquake here in the Bay Area. Former State Treasurer Phil Angelides tried to make that point when he was running for governor, but it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. After boot camp, Matthew was assigned to the 144th Military Police Unit, 4th Platoon. After being sent to Germany for something or other and down to Katrina, they sent him overseas to Kuwait and then over the border into Iraq. He is stationed somewhere north of Baghdad. I don't know where exactly, but I hear it is a very mixed area with all three main groups in Iraq, the Sunni and Kurdish minorities and the Shia majority. But according to him, it's quiet there, and he is bored most of the time. I think boredom in this case is a really good thing. I don't get to communicate with him much. He apparently has limited email access. He gets to call his girlfriend once a week or something. I also heard that when a soldier is killed, they cut off all email because they don't want anyone notifying relatives of the deceased before the military can perform their rituals around these awful events. I do get some word through his sister and his girlfriend, but the family has warned me not to send any quote-unquote subversive materials that could get him into trouble. So I sent him homemade, all-organic chocolate chip cookies. He is supposedly fighting to liberate Iraq and bring them such rights as free speech, but neither of us can speak freely about it. Just after he joined the Army, I sent my son to Chris Hedges' book, War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning, by a war correspondent who realized after a colleague was killed covering a conflict that he was hooked on the thrill of war and argued that nations do that too. I had some criticisms of the book, but it's a worthwhile read to take a step back and examine some of the wider issues involved in war. I explained to Matthew that when he was little, it was my job to hold his hand and teach him to look both ways before crossing the street. And I said that the book was just that. Apparently, he took great offense from the gesture and somehow got the idea I was trying to make him feel bad about his decision. I had heard through other family members that he wants me to be proud of him. Of course, every child wants this from his or her parent, but it's a tough thing for me to do in this instance. I want to be proud of him, but not for going overseas and holding a gun to support a lie piled on top of many supportive lives, helping to terrorize a people into being more like us instead of more like who they really are. I don't blame him for believing the lies, for they run deep in our culture and they are very persuasive. Thinking about this, I wrote an email message to Matthew just after he was sent over to Iraq. I told him that the toughest task facing him was to keep his humanity when all sides around him were going to try to strip it from him. I will be very proud of him if he can do that. But if he can, he will be in a very small minority in the world. I like to think that things are changing, and I remain hopeful. I'm reminded of the father whose son was beheaded in Iraq, and the media called him up when the supposed killer was summarily executed to ask him if he will now sleep better. And he replied, "No, didn't this man have a family too? When will the violence end?" The media tried to bait him further, but to his credit, he kept his humanity and didn't want anyone dying in his son's name, even his son's murderer. One of our great American heroes said, "The most important thing we have to do is prove that in a time of stress, we can live up to our beliefs." That was Eleanor Roosevelt. So Matthew has spent about 3 months in Iraq on a 1-year tour. He signed for 8 years, and that time will be close when he comes back. But I don't know when he's coming home really, as things seem to be pointing to some action against Iran. This time his time was supposed to be 8 years of part-time, quote-unquote, soldiering. 1 weekend a month and a few weeks in the summer is all they need. Do you think we can sue the Army for false advertising? The quote-unquote economic draft, like my son, many American victims of the war occupation fit the rural, small-town profile. And policies like stop-loss put the lie to our supposed all-volunteer military. The military stop-loss policy says, even though your time may be up, we can keep you or bring you back because it's a quote-unquote national emergency. Read the small print in the contract you signed. Basically, it's now the "you are ours until we let you go" military. We need to do all we can to support the troops in a real sense. I want to ask, what are the real costs of war, and why don't we have a balance sheet implanted in the psyche of our people? Look to our history. Mother's Day started as a protest to the cost of war following our American Civil War. How many of you know this? How and why has that meaning been lost? More soldiers who served in the Vietnam-American War and returned, quote-unquote, safely from hell committed suicide in the ensuing years than are in the official statistics of 59,000 dead Americans. And some are still dying today from the effects of the WMDs we use there, the chemical warfare we waged with horrors like napalm and Agent Orange. What are the real costs of war? In business, they teach about externalities that don't factor into the bottom line. These are costs that someone else pays. I ask you, who is paying for this illegal and immoral sham of a war on terror? There are some among us who think that he or she can escape from pain, but unless you live on another planet, there is no escape. Remember the anti-war novel Catch-22? As a soldier, you could be sent home if the military determined you to be insane. But if you wanted to get out, that's grounds for determining sanity, because you would have to be crazy to want to fight in a war. So you had to pretend you wanted to stay in so that they could then determine you were insane and send you home. But if they really believed you wanted to stay in, you were a hero and they weren't about to let you go home. We are trapped in the Bush administration's catch-22 of support the troops. Watch the movie Sir No Sir, a powerful documentary on the untold story of GI resistance to the Vietnam-American illegal and immoral police action. Congress never officially declared war as required by our Constitution. Started with a lie called the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. Then support our troops for real through one of the organizations listed on my handout. It's the light green paper. And don't fall for the nonsense that says ending this horror is somehow not supporting our troops. The late journalist Molly Ivins suggested we leave Iraq before we kill more people than Saddam Hussein did. We are probably drawing close to his numbers, so let's go already. Let's end the insanity of war and the neo-colonial corporate reoccupation of Iraq and the much larger project for American empire in the world once and for all. Do it for my son Matthew and all the sons and daughters involved in all aspects of this insanity. Do it for the earth. A different world is possible. We have to believe that, and we have to work for it. Thank you.